So, met elkaar oyesin, all my relations, that's all of you. This is Mark still coming to you with my third interview. Although I have to say it's kind of my fifth because I did this with Terry last Friday and for some reason I had no audio and it wouldn't post. And yesterday I actually had somebody else, but I really wanted to get Terry up first and foremost before anyone else because I value this man so much. Now, Terry, I call him my cousin because his mother is a still, also from Palmyra. I am a still from Palmyra. And that's all I'm going to say about him. I would like Terry to introduce himself with his Superman t-shirt.
Well, if you really want to know what that stands for, I'll share it with you later on that one. But anyway, my name is Terrell W. Person. Born in a little town called Palmyra, raised there, went to high school there, left there, came back to Palmyra, and went to California for a minute, came back to Palmyra, and was there most of my life. And then now I happen to live in Hainesport after living in Mount Laurel for a while. Have two beautiful sons, 4 granddaughters, and family is premier to me. I'm all about family. My life work has been SOS, save our society one family at a time. So anything I can do to build and equip families, that's my MO.
Can you talk a little bit about Jacob's Chapel?
I sure can. I'd be more than happy to talk about that. That's my passion too. Jacob's Chapel is a historical church that goes back into the 1840s. And before that, it was Coleman Town Meeting House, which was there. And Jacob's Chapel is enclosed with 2 churches. One was Coleman Town Meeting House. The other building is Jacob's Chapel AME Church, which I am the pastor of. Also, we have a historical cemetery where my great-great-grandfather is buried, Dr. James Still, known as the Black Doctor of the Pines. Also, we have several, I would say about 12 Civil War soldiers, Black Civil War soldiers who fought for their liberation at that time. So I am one of the curators we have a organization called Jacob's Chapel Coleman Town Foundation, which I am the CEO, and I've been doing reenactments for years. Been working with the not high school, but middle school in Mount Laurel and other schools, surrounding schools who do Underground Railroad tours. Also with Keith Henley and myself, we wrote a play called If These Stones Could Talk, depicting the story of my ancestors, which was William Still and his mother and father, and they had 19 children, but William was one of the prominent people on the Underground Railroad. So we tell all those different stories, especially from Charity's and Levin's perspective when they were enslaved on the eastern shores of Maryland, as you know, Mark, and they, Levin bought his freedom, came to South Jersey with his family and his wife. And when he did that, the slave catchers a few months later came back, recaptured her, took her back. He had his manumission papers, but she didn't. So he took the property back, and we do that reenactment from the church. And masterful piece. There's several books that have been written on that. So if anybody's interested in books, please see me. I got a few left. One is The Early Recollections of Dr. James Still. The other book would be The Underground Railroad, written by William Still. And then there's a book, Kidnapped and the Ransom, written by Peter Still or Kate Picard. She tells his story.
Right.
So we got a lot of history here, and we want to share that history.
I just want to jump in here and say that I have all those books. I've read all those books. They're near and dear to me. You name dropped Keith Henley's name. I know Keith because we used to reenact together. In fact, the last conversation I had was with a guy by the name of Sa, and he also reenacted with me.
Oh, so, great.
I know a lot of the stills. I know a lot of the actors. I know a lot of the musicians in Philadelphia. But okay, so the point of the conversations is that there's a lot of social unrest in America right now. And it seems to me there are a lot of people, it doesn't seem to me, it's the truth. There are a lot of people who are telling us and shouting at us and preaching to us and lecturing to us what we need to do. but there are
Mhm.
very few people that are really actually having conversations. And it seems to me all the conversations that I've been watching on social media and that I'm aware of involve the church. I recently watched a video with Kirk Franklin and a few other pastors, and I saw some other churches talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
this. So my question for you, Terry, is it's a big one, but it's the point of all these conversations. How do we unify? How do we find peace? What are we doing wrong, and what should we be doing right?
Well, one of the things that we must have, and I think when let's look at the church first. I think if we look at the church, I think we have a systemic problem right in the church. You don't have to go to government. You don't have to go to communities. I think the church has one of the heaviest responsibilities, and that's to really come back and tell the truth. And everybody knows the truth. I mean, most people understand that it's imago Dei. Uh, God created man. And when we understand the truth about that matter, we're going to be the better for it. And so I understand that I've been reading this book now. It's called One Race, One Blood. And it talks about, it's a white pastor and a black pastor who co-authored this particular book. And it really comes into Darwinism, which was really rampant back in those days. And that's what shifted the whole gears and built this thing called this race baiting thing. Because the reality of it, when God created, there was just different hues of mankind, different
Amen,
colors.
brother.
And that's it. And anybody who does anything other than that, we're out of order. And so when man comes against man, which had happened in the Garden of Eden, as we said the other week, Cain slew Abel. And that was two brothers. And so, we've been doing the same thing all along. And we got to understand that, hey, we cannot any longer not have a conversation about what's the truth. And any Christian that believes in Darwinism is out of order. And we know it bleeds into our society. And that's the sad news today, that we have churches that if just don't say anything and really clarify that, hey, we're all brothers and sisters in this thing together. Now, I think the only thing that really separates us from anybody, and it really didn't separate us from God, because he knew while we were yet sinners, he died for us. So he was still willing to love us past our faults and bring us back together. But now we got governments in place that make it impossible for you to be part of the system, fully engaged into a system that they have, which is called society. And they have fringe benefits that a lot of people don't have. And I just watched another tape with a handicapped man in a wheelchair, 4 police officers on punching him. Just to bring him under submission. And these are the kind of things that, took place. I watched a movie last night that blew my mind about the injustices and inequities over in, what's that place over there? Help me. It was over in, what is people called abolitionists? No, Aborigines.
In Australia.
Australia. And I watched that last night, and the horrific things that were done to those people.
Yeah.
All over this world. When you stop and think about it, we got some healing in this nation to do. And I don't think, all I think here Black people is asking for is justice. That's all. I mean, nobody's becoming militant behind this thing. We're saying, hey, we're part of. And that's it. And so I believe the church has to take a righteous stand and have a conversation with their families and a conversation with some Black people. Just like we're sitting here talking right now, we got to have this conversation. And that's the only thing that's going to build a relationship back with anybody, is if we have the tough conversations that each person knows, hey, we bleed, we love, we live, and we're all going to die. And so we all have everything in common, but except one thing: we divide on a color scheme, and that's not right at all. That's not right. And so we have to do better in having the conversation, because guess what? All these things have been put into a system because, to empower a group of people. And that was a system. And that's why they talk about systemic injustices. It's built into the equation of how we treat people and how we mandate laws. And even though we have laws that sound one way, they have binding factors another way. It's according to how you read anything. And we read the scriptures differently when you stop and look at it. And God said, love all men. So.
And God said, love your neighbor as yourself. So, and he didn't go as far as to define your neighbor. So the only takeaway from that is we're all neighbors.
That's right.
We're all family.
That's it.
I mean, when Christ came, he actually went out to the Samaritans. He went out to the Gentiles. He went out to the Romans. He went to the tax collectors. All the quote dregs, right? He went to those people and he said, follow me.
Yep, that's the truth.
So I believe that Christ came to break down all these artificial barriers, the barriers that we, humanity, built up.
Well, he did break them down, but we have to fulfill the breakdown that he did, because when he went to that cross, that's where redemption comes in. But how can one be redeemed when a society does not even value or redeem that which God redeemed?
Right.
That's the problem. And so because we want to usurp ourselves above God. And so when you look at that, that is satanic or satanic.
Right.
And when people do that, they're saying, I'm God, and my laws are the only laws that count. But as far as I can remember, there was only 10 commandments. Commandments. And the commandment is something that you are charged to do. And so if he was the creating factor and created all humanity, and I know everybody doesn't believe in that theology, but that's what I choose to believe, and I know other people believe that. But if you believe that and you've taken the tenets out of the biblical account of God's creative order, and you are a Christian, how can you blend in Darwinism? And I was reading some things about that. Anybody who was of a different hue or a different color was a monkey, or, they were equated with chimpanzees. Chinese, Japanese were considered chimpanzees. And, different variations of colors, they was equated to, like, the gorilla was a dumb animal. None of those animals are dumb. They were all part of his created order, but nobody was created the way he did man.
Right.
When you stop and think about it, he formed him out of the dirt and then put his nephesh, blew his breath in him. The life of God is in man. So when you're killing a man or you're discounting a man, you are discounting God himself. You are flying into the face of God. And so you're not coming against man, you're coming against God. Anytime you can have a separation of races, what you call races, because in the Bible it talks about tongues, kindreds, and nations.
Right.
You usually see the word race really in there.
Well, my own studies have shown me that the actual word race was first used by slave traders that brought the slaves from Africa to the Caribbean, to the States, to the colonies. So it was a word and a concept that was coined to justify what they were doing.
Yes.
So to this day, I don't even use the word race unless I'm talking about the human race. And I don't speak of racism because I think using the word itself is creating a division. I mean, I understand there's prejudice and there's absence of God and divisions and all that. I'm not going to give credence to a concept I don't believe in.
Well, whether you believe in it or not, the thing of it is they have these words that people have put in, and they did put race in, which is a systematic, their theology of how that we can control and control everything and everybody and make us the superior when there was no superior.
Oh, there is absolutely no superior.
Superior except, except God.
The very first chapter of Genesis, God created them in his own image. Yeah. He didn't say he created the white ones in his own image or the brown ones in his own image, just them.
Yep, that's it. And so that's where we got to get back to the truth. But that gets blurred even in theology. That gets blurred. because they take scriptures that what is it, slaves obey your masters and those kind of things, and they take that. I mean, that may be true, but they might take it out and put it in another context,
Right.
to make you socially accepted. But slaves were treated in a different way at certain times, and at one point in time, a slave could be freed. And what they choose, that's why you see the earrings in people's ears. It was called an awl. They would put in the ear.
Right, right.
And they would, if sometimes the slaves would choose to be with that family because they became part of that family, and they stayed on. But that was their freedom or their choice to do so. But this stuff that's going on, what's going on now, and still going on in other forms, is hypocrisy. It's just against God's will, I believe. I think if anybody does a crime, they need to do the time. But guess what? When you do trumped up stuff and systemic things that are in place to make people fall and to make people err, that's the problem that I see that's really in America. And we do that. I mean, I watched a movie years ago, and you probably seen the movie. It was a little kid's movie, and I love this movie. It was called Pinocchio.
Okay.
And you said, well, what's that got to do with it? But what they did with those little kids was they took them to the park, and they turned them into asses, and they gave them these cigars to smoke. I don't know if you remember the movie.
I do. I'm a big fan of the original Disney films.
But guess what? After a while, the kids, they turned into donkeys, and then they enslaved them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the same picture that I see that they've done to us. They went to the continent of Africa, which we look at Africa as it was never really a civilization. But somebody can't even figure out how they got the pyramids up there yet, with all the technology. Some people don't know how they amassed. They had water systems. They had electricity. They never got credit for a lot of that stuff. Years later, they give it to some other people, the credit that they did. These people had dynasties back then. I mean, they had waterways. They was traveling here. They came here. There's pyramids in Ohio that we don't even talk about in our history. That people came from another continent and settled in America. And then and then they say Columbus discovered this place. He was lost.
We were just talking about that, yeah.
And as Flip Wilson said, you better discover your butt away from here. But how do you discover something that's already here? And then
the pyramids you were talking about in Ohio. You said Ohio, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm familiar with them. There's a lot of speculation and conversation and investigation about that. It's the first time, Terry, that I've heard somebody suggest that it was from another continent, and that it was supposed to be Native American Indian populations, what they call the Anasazi, that goes back centuries, millennia.
Yeah. But think about it. Where did it all come from?
Oh, we all come from Africa.
Yeah, you got
every single one of us.
Every single one of us. It came from. So all that came out of there, and like I said, there's only one man. I don't care what flavor you are. It's only one, human, and that's it. And so, we all looking. So we're giving this one credit, but look, a lot of the credit has been given. Look at all the things that have been, I won't say manufactured, but created. A lot of things that have copyrights on them, or those things, patents. Let's use the patent system. A lot of those things were created by some of the slaves that when they were enslaved, and they never could get the rights. They stole people's rights with music. I mean, I believe Michael Jackson them left here because of the Prince. These people had some powerful rights to all that music that they had. They made millions of dollars, and I think a lot of them lost all that money, through thievery, because of patents and laws and different things that manipulate and steal. And so I think it's no different than back then than now. People still.
Oh, I agree. We didn't. I didn't bring this up to you on Friday, but I do want to mention that there's absolutely a very ungodly division in this world. Myself, I don't see it breaking down by skin color or by skin tone. I think it often does. It often works out that way, but I see it more of a classist system. And so often, unfortunately, there are so many urban communities and so many poor people who are poor people of color. But if you have the power, if you have the money, you have the power. If you have the power, you got the money. It's classism, again, that is extremely the absence of God, and that is we must work against.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's a whole lot of isms, you know, classism,
Yes,
socialism being another one. It's a whole lot of schisms and isms. But again,
I like
all
that. Schisms and isms. I like that.
all those are divisive systems that dehumane mankind. I don't care what color you are. It does it to all.
Yes.
And so even if you look at the slave institution, guess what? The big boss, you know, the ones who was the money brokers, they was the gods in a sense. Then you had some white people who were like they're the ones that are overseer. And they gave him a charge. They were like the policemen back in those days. So if they ran off, who went to get them? The overseer. Get my property back. Same thing going on today. Take care of my property. I mean, who owns the cities? Most people, Fortune 500 companies, small, rich, independent people own businesses and those things. Guess who takes care of it for them? The system, systematic government takes care of that. So nothing has changed. It's a system that has been in place for a long time.
I agree.
And so it controls, I agree with you with classism. But classism has to do with race too. I mean, you just one step under a black person, that's or above a black person maybe, you know, and that's where it's at. So they do look at people differently about, you know, your background, what you have, what you don't have, what your pedigree in a sense. You know, they look at all that kind of stuff.
So what's the way out, Terry? What do we do?
The way out is what we're doing right now. One of the ways out is to have conversations and people and the system being exposed to what it is.
Amen.
And I mean, God gave us the answer. You know, he gave us the answer. It was clear. He said, love me. And if you don't love God, you can't love me. We can stop right there. If you can't love God and respect the creator of the universe who says to love everybody, love your neighbor, love your enemy, love everybody. You know, and we want to divide and separate everything. And so we just got to go back to 101 basics. It's about the creator first. If you love God, you're going to have to love his creation, you know, and that's the way I look at it. I love God and his creation. And I don't care what, you know, who I come in contact with. I love my enemy. I don't like what they do, but I love them because that was God's creation. And I know, you know, I was a sinner that was saved by grace. So Satan tricked me into thinking I was doing things that were right when they were totally wrong. But thanks be to God, to his grace and his mercy, that when you ask for repentance and ask for forgiveness, that he will cleanse you from all unrighteousness and make you whole. And if I fall, get up and fall again, guess what? He says, you know, come back to me and be restored. And so if we're going to be restored, I know there's a scripture, I believe, I can't remember where it is, but I can quote it, I think. If my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways and seek my face, I will heal the land. God will heal us if we just turn back to him. So it's first, before you turn back to your brother, turn back to God, because the sin is not against me. The sin, when you're sinning in the face, and anybody who sins is sinning right in God's face. And then you're telling God to bless it. God's not going to bless mess. He's not interested in people's color. He's not interested because he made the rainbow. Think about it.
Right,
right. I don't know if I told you this story, but I was watering my flowers the other day. I don't know if I told you that last week, but I was spraying this hose with a fine mist and the sun beamed on it. And I seen a rainbow, but not only did I see one rainbow, I seen a double rainbow in that rainbow. And it was all colors in there.
Amen.
The only colors it was kind of absent of was black and white. That kind of threw me off for a minute. I didn't see black or white in the rainbow. And I'm not saying it wasn't there. I said I didn't see it. But I saw the yellows, I saw the purple, I saw the greens, I saw the blues. You know, I saw all those beautiful colors, you know, and I believe that God created, you know, and I know that the homosexual movement has taken that rainbow theology thing, you know, but guess what? I think God had that in place all the way back. Because if you go back to Hezekiah, when the prophet saw the rainbow, he was seeing God at that time.
Right.
And that's what we got to look at, that, hey, we are a people of many different colors, a people of many different hues. And when we shine together, when the sun shines on us, listen to that, the sun. And I ain't talking about the S-U-N, I'm talking about the S-O-N.
S-O-N, yes.
S-O-N shines on us, man. We will be seen for who we are, his beauty, his creative order, all that he did for us and mankind and the world. I mean, it would be so boring to have something just all black and all white. But he didn't do that. He gave us a rainbow of coalitions that he thought was beautiful. And so do I.
I would imagine somebody is going to comment on this and get back to me on this. But one of the colors that you mentioned, or colors, one of those descriptors, black and white, one of them is defined as the absence of color. I think sometimes I've heard that both of them have been defined as the absence of color. So I don't know, that sounds a little inspirational to me. You know, if black and white itself is not a barrier, is not something that restrains us by its very definition, it's ridiculous that we do it.
Yeah. Well, you know, not only do, you know, it doesn't restrain me. Both of my sons have married, if you want to use the term, a technical term, Caucasian women. You know?
Okay.
And so therefore, if you want to use the technical term, but I look at them as my daughters. You know, that's how I look at them. And in one case, my one son, they have a divorce. They divorced. But I told my daughter-in-law, I said, you and my son may have separated, but as long as you live, you're gonna still be my daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
And I will love you like a daughter-in-law, and I do. And we still are family, you know. And they're, you know, they're civil to each other, and they take care of their responsibilities, you know, to handle their children and doing for each other and caring for each other the best that they can. And but I told her that, and I told, you know, him, I said, you know, hey, she bears my legacy, and that's them grandchildren. And so how am I going to hate her because you couldn't get it together? You know, I'm not going to hate anybody, and not about color. So like, again, it's not about color. When I look at my grandmother was what you would call part German Jew. She had black in her and what you call German and Jew.
Right.
But guess what? She passed for white. She could. She didn't choose to. And she took my sister, who was my complexion, and she went down south on the train. And they told her, when she was sitting in the seat, you got to go into the back cars with that little black child. My grandmother was a little fiery woman. She gave him her piece of her mind. She didn't move. She kept her seat with my little sister. And I'll never forget that story, you know. But that's why, you know, color don't really matter, because I know everybody's somebody. And my best friend, Tommy Hudson, man, me and that guy grew up together. Woo! I love that boy to this day. And we don't even see each other. I mean, we talk every once in a while on the phone. But his mother and my mother, we shared homes with each other. I'd be at his house just about every weekend. He'd be at my house. We stay in there. We going to this driving down the Delaware River in duck boats with shotguns. Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. We just had a ball out there. We were the craziest two kids you ever wanted to see, but we enjoyed life together. And to this day, we are truly brothers by different mothers.
Every time I talk to you, you've got different stories from your past, and they're all entertaining.
There's some good stories, man. And I got pictures of these stories too, when we're out there fishing and hunting and gunning and stuff. So, but
when you were talking about in the garden and with the mist, you didn't mention that to me at the last conversation, but you put it into one of your sermons, if I'm not mistaken, one of your Sunday sermons.
I think I did, yeah.
And it brought to mind one of my favorite passages from Hebrew scripture. I can't remember if it was Abraham. I think it was Abraham. It could have been.
Oh, yeah.
This is kind of, I'm embarrassed, I don't remember. But the thing was, whoever went out to the garden, to the desert to meet God because he was told, I'll talk to you in the desert. And first of all, there was what? A thunderstorm, but God wasn't there. And then there was an earthquake. God wasn't there. And then there was a huge fire, flashed up and out. God wasn't there. And then a small breeze came by.
Mm-hmm.
God was there. With
Nothing.
all the people who are shouting and yelling and, like I said, lecturing and trying to tell us what to do and how to be, nobody's taken the time to have these, if you'll forgive me, have these small, still conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what we need to have. We need to talk this thing out, and listen. That's the problem. A lot of times we don't listen to one another. We hear one another, but we don't listen with our heart and understand how the other person, feels, and whether it's real or not. That's how you feel. And when you're brought up to tell, by society and say, hey, you're different. And I remember at 12 years old, man, and I think I brought this story up. We had to work when we were young. And I can remember going to Riverton Country Club, and I'd have to go out there and carry 2 bags on my shoulders at 12 years old and take a lot of abuse sometimes. Some of the guys were real nice. Some of them were not so nice.
Yeah.
But for like $3.50 to $4 for both bags, $8 to walk 6 miles with 2 bags, and you're somebody's boy for that few minutes. But before you could go out, I'd be there 7 o'clock in the morning. The older men went out first, and then you would get the scrubby golfers, the poorer golfers that couldn't afford to get the tee times early. But I would sit around that. There was a pool there in Riverton Country Club. You might know about that. And yeah. My hands would be pressed to the fence, and I'd be wishing that one day I could swim in that pool. Never did, probably never will, but I could see those kids frolicking, having a good time. My place to swim was the Pennsauken Creek and the Delaware River. And maybe every once in a while, my dad would get done caddying and take us down to Parvin State Park for a quick hour. Every time he got off caddying, and it'd be 2 or 3 o'clock, the park closed probably at 5 or 6. And we'd get a little buckets of chicken, and we'd go there. My mom would make, and we'd sit down there, eat, and then jump in the water. Every time you jumped in the water, it was time to go back home. So it was different. You're watching all these other people having the advantage. Now, thanks be to God, I was privy to it. But now, as a grown man, I made sure my children had opportunities to belong to swim clubs and to belong to different things. So I saw what I wanted, and I wanted for them, and things are shifting, but they got to shift a little faster for other people. And some things are keeping people in the same place that they were 50 years ago, even if it's just by a mindset. And so the one thing we have to do is, it's really only one race, and we have to embrace the race, human race, and realize everybody has a value. And think about it. If it wasn't for the gentleman, I can't think of his name right now, but the blood plasma, I forget his name.
I know. Yeah, right. I know.
He needed his own blood plasma, and he couldn't get it. He died from it.
Right.
But he created that. So, so think about it. If we're talking about the blood, one race, one blood. If my blood is good enough to go in a white person's veins or another person's veins, then isn't it good enough to live next door to you, good enough to get equal jobs, good enough to do everything else, that I can do, instead of being set up to be set down? And so that's the way I feel about it. And I just pray that we would have the conversation that people can really understand, because the myth is you got to watch them people. The myth is that, they're less than, and that's just a myth. And they've been taught that. That's been taught. And some of it's been caught, but most of it has been taught through subliminal messages, but direct messages. And the thing that frightens me is the sense that you have people out here right now who still have what I call masks or hoods might not have them on, but they still have the hood theology. And they're going around here bearing arms, still burning crosses, still, you know, you talk about the United States, but guess what? We're still sporting that flag that don't belong here, the Confederate flag. That shouldn't be sported, you know, as a symbol, and we know what that symbol is. So those are the kind of things that, you know, we're gonna have to work past, and the way we do it, Mark, is the conversation we're having today, and other people need to have conversations.
Well, I got to tell you, myself, I don't have a problem with the Confederate flag because I never saw it as a symbol of hatred. But, you know, if other people do have a problem with it and they want it removed, that's fine. I know I have met so many people in my travels. I've traveled around half the world. I count so many people as actual blood relatives, even without going back all the way to the first man, the first woman, our Genesis from Africa. I've known a lot of people that motivations and attributes are ascribed to them that aren't always true. That's one of the things that I pride myself on, Terry, is I'm willing to listen to everybody and listen to what they have to say. And if I think they're saying something wrong, then I challenge them on it.
Well, I want to challenge you on that theology you just opened up to me, because
Go ahead, please.
And this was by accident I found this, and this was just very recently. It was a gentleman by the name of what's his name, Williamson, I believe, and he's a Black accountant in Atlanta. Is Thompson is his last name, William Thompson. So I was trying to find him. I couldn't find his phone number in my thing. So I went online and I put William Thompson in, but I picked up either it was William H. Thompson or William V. Thompson. I put the wrong one in. I can't remember exactly which one it was. And it came up. And this is the first time I really looked at what that flag stood for. And in there, this William, so you research William Thompson, you'll see back in the 1800s,
okay,
when they put that flag in there, that flag, they were trying to get that passed to be the national flag that, you know, ran America in a sense. They still wanted to keep that flag. And we were supposed to be a United States. We know the country was divided on North and South, and the reason it was divided, they wanted to keep slavery. But the theology behind that flag is white supremacy. There is the bedrock of slavery. There is the bedrock of institutions that are against Black people. That's the bedrock. They feel that white people are superior to every man. Now, the whole conversation that we had, God created and said we're all the same. That's the division that makes America, will never let America be United States. And that's that theology, because anytime somebody usurps their authority or their humanity above somebody else's humanity, then we have a division. And, you know, we're going to be divided, you know. And so I never looked at it that way. This is, as a man, just recently I found out, I thought it was just, you know, the Confederate soldiers and no. That was the theology behind that whole thing. And we need to understand that.
Tell me the name again.
His name is it's William V. Thompson or William H. Thompson.
Okay. I'll look it up.
If you don't find it, give me a call and I'll look it up again myself too, and I'll share that with you. But it blew my mind. This is like 2 weeks ago. I'm just getting this knowledge. And I said, you know, I knew it was pretty bad, but you know, and then when you think about that, a lot of the people behind that was the ones wearing the robes, the Ku Klux Klan, and what have you.
Absolutely. But you're telling me that you found this out 2 weeks ago. I mean, maybe one of our problems is ignorance, because I know to a lot of people. In fact, I've met some Black people from the South who I wouldn't say they brandished the flag, but you know, you go into their house and they had a flag on the wall. They would have like a Confederate flag on the T-shirt, and to them it meant something else. To them, it was just a matter of regional pride. Perhaps they didn't know about the history of Williamson. I mean, you're telling me about it, and so this is something that I'm learning.
Yeah, he's in the
and I'm
Congress.
going to research.
He's in the Congress. So
All I'm suggesting is that just because somebody wears something or says something or has a certain behavior, we shouldn't be quick to judge them. We should
no,
find out about them. We
yeah,
should have this conversation and maybe impart a little knowledge.
yeah, we can do that. I agree. We should have a conversation, but if the conversation is going to end to me on a tree,
Oh God, no! Good Lord, no, 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 no!
you know, because I mean, you don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, they're still doing. I mean, we see, and this is the thing, Mark, that they're seeing today. They were hanging them in the trees, but now we got police hanging them through the knees. And I saw something again today where this guy was getting roughed up. You know, so I don't want to turn into a black and white thing. I want to say good and evil, because guess what? If anybody can take a lame man and be punching him and he's tied up and bound by 4 other men and then put strangleholds on him and
yeah.
chokeholds.
That's good and evil, Terry. There's no doubt about it.
So I'm not saying all people aren't, but guess what? What that represents, you know, I mean, if I was to pull a red, black, and green flag and fly it, I guess I would think a whole lot of people have something to say, because they would think that means, you know, black power.
That's what I'm talking about.
And the only
We are
thing
too quick to judge people by symbols. We are too quick to assign labels to people by symbols and, again, what they wear, what they say. Most people, overwhelming majority of people that I've come to know through all my travels, I mean, I'm a talkative guy, right? I like meeting people.
Mhm.
Overwhelming, I've met a lot of good people. They're good in their hearts. They just need knowledge. They need a relationship with God. I believe that with all my heart. And they believe, and they need someone to listen.
I think you're hitting the nail right on the head, and I think that's what we all need, whether we're black, whether we're white, whether we're brown, whether we're red. Let's end it on this note, that I think we can really truly agree. If we all have the common denominator, and we talked about that earlier in the lesson, that I have to love and respect everybody, and I do. I mean, if that's a person's desire to do that, you know, they can do it. But I'm gonna love that person a little more from a distance. But I'm gonna love them. I understand what I'm saying. I'm not gonna do anything to harm them. I'm gonna be praying for them, that they would know right from wrong, and not to debase another person. Because anytime you go to debase another person by anything, then you're coming against the divine one. So I'm not going to try to hurt nobody. I mean, you can be what I mean, society says you can. It's a free country. You think and do what you want to do, basically. But if we're trying to bring uniformity, why would they take a man who kneels and ostracize him and not let him play football anymore because he took a stand? Which, same thing, if somebody's fallen, like a military guy, they would get a knee instead of standing for the national. You know, so again, that's parallel to what you're kind of saying. You know, they isolated this young man. Now they want to bring him back. I don't know if he's going to be good enough to get back, but who knows? And that's another story for another day.
So I guess you're running out of time, Terry?
Oh, how much time you want?
Well, I wanted to say one more thing. And I've been waiting for the right time, because there's so much to discuss, you and I. But you mentioned before about loving your enemy.
Mm-hmm.
See, one of the insights that I've come to in my journey is that if you truly want to have the hope of changing somebody's heart and planting a seed in there, right? Not your seed, God's seed.
Yep.
You don't do it by shouting at them. You don't do it by saying they're wrong, unless you know something like really egregiously wrong, like putting your knee on somebody's neck.
Yeah, that's wrong.
But if somebody, you can't really understand their point of view, instead of shouting them down and saying they're wrong, talk to them. Because if that person understands that he's being listened to, that person, if you respect that person, there's a chance that that person may get to see the light. But if you're just going to shun him and repulse him or her, that person's not is not motivated to learn. That person's not motivated to change. That person's motivated to actually add you to his enemy list, right?
Possibly,
So,
yeah.
so love your enemy. Yes, absolutely. Believe it
Yeah,
with all my
I'm
heart.
not saying is love the hell out of them.
Oh, you know what? You said something last week. You say this often, and I found out some time ago that actually Martin Luther King probably was the first one to say it. The most segregated time in America, 11 o'clock on Sunday,
Yep,
10 o'clock Sunday.
yep, that is. That is.
Talk
Right in
about
it.
systemic.
Yeah, it's built in. And when you look at little Jacob Chapel, think about it. We're AME, but if you look at our bylaws, our thing is all people.
Yeah.
Even though our banner is, AME, and the only, like I forgot to mention this last time we were together, that the only reason that we separated from the Methodist Church in Philadelphia is because they would not allow us to pray at the altar.
Oh, you did mention that.
And they staged the walk.
Absalom Jones.
Yep, Absalom Jones.
Which is something that Keith and I and Sar used to talk about, in the history reenactments.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about Absalom Jones and who's the other guy?
Oh, you're gonna make me think Richard Allen.
That's it, Richard Allen. Yes. Yes.
And so they did that walkout and started in a horseshoe shop. And that's why we get our insignia, the anvil and the cross. And look what they built up to this day. And if it wasn't for some of those AMEs who saved the white people in Philadelphia when the plague hit, yellow fever hit Philadelphia.
Yellow fever, yes.
It was Richard Allen who went around and got blacks to carry these bodies out. So you talk about a pandemic situation, who comes to the rescue? Their brother, their own brother. He happened to be of another hue, but guess what? He's the one that did that. So, and even after being enslaved, for a time in his life, he still didn't he looked past people's faults and saw that, hey, we're all in this thing together. So it's not a bitterness, hate, relationship. And I think, Black Panthers got a bad rap because they were trying to do some things, just like any free American could do. To bear arms. Guess what? They took their arms away. They trumped up charges on them, and they was teaching their kids. They was feeding the kids that wasn't getting fed with social programs. And so anything that we try to do, they'll try to manipulate it, the government or the system, because you talk about a systemic system. We don't want that to take place. We don't want these people to be educated. We don't want them to know more than they need to know. Because guess what? A system does what it does. And this system has not broke down to this point yet, because now we got the new Jim Crow. And I don't know if I got that book up here somewhere. I think I did. It's a book up here in my library. Michelle, I forget Michelle's last name, but she wrote the book about the new Jim Crow. And it's the same thing. You come out of one form of slavery, but then they set laws into place and you go back into another form of slavery. I mean, especially when you come in with the laws about, drugs within a certain parameter of a school. Guess what? In an inner city, you're going to always be within that parameter. So now you're going to get charges a higher rate than anybody else is going to get. And so it's a lot of unjust things that are caused instead of rehabilitation or jobs or creation in certain things, because guess what? That's making a lot of money for a lot of people. That's the new plantation. And they got poor whites and a lot of poor blacks in there, in those systems. Yes, they do.
Yeah, right.
And we got, we got work to do. And so I think my whole philosophy is, hey, if we want to turn this thing around, we can. Because, the absence of a father in a home is one of the major breakdowns. A promiscuous society, years ago, they didn't show the kind of stuff they show on television right now. Who loosed those laws? And so they figured out, okay, I can make money on people's doing bad. If they break a law, they go to jail, they're going to pay a fine. They're going to do this, they're going to do that. All those kind of things come into play, because this is a capitalistic society, as you know. And guess what? Money drives this thing. And I was told a long time ago, he said, boy, when I call my daddy Uncle Tom, he said, boy, let me tell you something. you ain't gonna do nothing against this system with a water pistol. You're gonna, you gotta learn the methods and ways and use it to your advantage. And there is a methodology in this country, in the world, and if you don't learn how to navigate through it, you can get hurt real quick. And we've seen a lot of people, whether it be Bobby Kennedy, whether it be John F. Kennedy, whether it be Martin Luther King, whether it be Malcolm X, Megar, you name them. When you come against the system, guess what? You're going down.
Yeah, I told you last week about a family member of a friend of mine back in the 90s, white family. The cops just out and out murdered him. And it was just like a 2-day investigation. And that was it. Family never had closure.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's sad. Woo. And so that's the kind of things we go through. And so again, we come back to the class system. Everything's not a race. Yeah. Everything, but it's still one thing. You can boil it down to one thing, my brother.
What's that?
S-I-N.
Sin. Yes, indeed.
And I don't care who do it, the payment for it is still death.
Americans don't like poor people. I don't think most of the world likes poor people. And that dislike is, like you said, S-I-N, because we're all brothers.
And what did God say? And the poor you shall have with you always.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's your brother that's poor. Why is he poor? Because you got everything hoarded over here.
Yes.
You can only sleep in one bed. You can only drive one car at a time. So it's crazy.
So listen, let me ask you this. At the last conversation, I lost the video feed and I switched to another computer, which I'm using right now. And you came back and you gave me another personal story for maybe 5 minutes. Do you remember that story?
Are you talking about the inequities and injustice of jobs and all that? Was you talking about that story?
No, it was something from your past. I can't recall exactly what.
If it was from my past, maybe I was talking about, having jobs with Procter & Gamble and Allstate, good jobs, and then losing them.
It could be. Story. I still have that. I could add that to this video.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly what story you're talking about, my past, or are you talking about something?
Like I said, every time I talk to you, it's a different story, and I love them all. I do. You're enlightening.
Was it something that happened to me personally? With
yeah.
Or can you remember that much? You have to give me which one. I got a lot of stories now. I have to go get them.
I'm sorry, Terry. I don't, but
oh, okay.
I can take a look at it, and I'll get back to you later, and I'll tell you what it is, because I still have that.
Okay, I don't remember which one you're talking about. It's not popping up my head, and you're not saying that's the one. So,
listen, I really appreciate this. Thank you very much. We've both been trying for a while to make this happen. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, Mark. Glad we could get it together.
This has been an absolute blessing.
And I do pray that it makes a difference in somebody's viewpoint.
That's the idea.
Yeah, and
so,
I pray it does.
I'm going to hit the stop record button, then I'll keep talking to you for a moment, okay?
Okay.
So everybody, peace. 4 fingers. I'm back. I realized that I had forgotten something. Terry had actually been part of a rally, 2 weeks ago, in Mount Laurel with Jacob's Chapel. He's well known. He's a leader in the community, and he stood with a number of the police in the community. And also he recently had an interview with a former police officer from Mount Laurel. So I just wanted Terry to take a few minutes to talk about that.
Yes, it was the rally was spawned by some young Mount Laurel high school students, or Lenape students. It was a young sheikh, a biracial young lady and a white young lady who promoted that event. It was a very civil and good march, and it was related to Mr. Floyd, who was murdered, bottom line, with a knee to the neck. And matter of fact, part of the rally was they walked around the lake several times. They had their signs. It was very peaceful. Mount Laurel police walked with us. Everything was harmonious. Then the young people got up there and said what was on their hearts and how the fear that these kind of things are causing, the injustices that's going on. And they had invited several other people to speak, me being one of those people who had an opportunity to say something. And one of my other members, Shannon Gaddy, who is a school teacher, and he had an opportunity to speak also. And one of the sheikhs had opportunity to speak. And everybody, it was on basically one accord, to the point that, it was a mixed group. I think predominantly more whites marching than there were blacks and brown people and other ethnic groups, if we want to classify them that way. But they were on one accord, and everybody was lifting up, and everybody was, tired of what's going on in America today. That was the real thing, the injustices that's going on in America. And then they gave me the mic and asked me to speak, and I spoke from the heart. And like I said, I spoke about trying to be an impact in the community. And I said I served this community for a mighty long time. I got 30 some years invested in families in Mount Laurel School District, and as far as the church and what have you, and willing to work together with the police and do anything we can to build our community up. We will do that to build that community up and make it great, as each person getting along with each other. And one of the main things that I was telling them that, hey, I'm mad. And mad means I'm making a difference. And that's the thing. Every one of us have to make a difference where we can. And my investment to Mount Laurel for the last, I would say, 35 years have been to Time Mentor Program. And that stands for Teach, Inform, Mentor, and Empower. And that's all I've been doing, is going around and taking white, black, I don't care what color you are. We have Indians, people in there. We get the kids and we train them to spend 1 hour a week with a child. I figured if we can get to know each other, then we can grow with each other. And that's what it, and so and I've done that program for, like I said, 30 some years. I have no funding from the township. Gives me a couple dollars if I need to buy something that helps take care of some of the cost factors. But for the most money I get coming through is $200 from one young kid who is actually my son's best friend, Eric Adams, who this young man, for the last maybe 10 years, gives me $200 a month to run that program. And it takes quite a bit more. So a lot of money's coming out of my own pocket to run a program, to do one thing, and that is to build a community. And, it's one thing to do. People are always saying, well, I said, what do you do when you got people running up into a lake and jumping in and drowning? And I'm talking about families. I say, you got to go up and intersect them before they get into the lake. And that's what my mission is to go up and catch them while they're babies and mentor them and help them to build relationships with community, whether it be black, white, or what have you. And now we deal with a systemic problem of racism and hatred. Now, these families love these kids. I got, black boys with white men and white women and vice versa. We got Spanish women dealing with, white children and black children. So it's a melting pot, and we're building that together. And so that's something that God gave me in 1971. I came back and ran it and been running ever since.
That is a perfect way to end. Thank you, Terry. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love you, brother.
Man, thank you for doing what you're doing, man. And I pray you really get out there into the community, man, and get hearts turned back around to God. And I think if we all turn around to Him, this place will be a better place for everybody.
I appreciate the prayers. Again, I'm going to say goodbye to folks. I'll hit stop record. I just wanted to talk to you for another minute afterwards.
All right.
Peace, four fingers. I'll see you again. I'm going to have another conversation probably tomorrow. So tomorrow, Friday. Hopefully this will be up. Well, this will be up today on Facebook at least.
Okay.
So,